The desert had stopped pretending to be alive. Colt's cracked paws left faint prints in the dust as he moved past the sun-bleached skeleton of a coyote twice his size. Beside him, Juniper struggled with each step, her pregnant belly swaying dangerously. The last spring had evaporated weeks ago, leaving only cracked earth and the mocking shadows of circling vultures. Even the hardy creosote bushes had surrendered, their roots baking in the shallow graves they dug for themselves. Colt paused to lick Juniper's ear, tasting salt and exhaustion. Somewhere beyond the heat-shimmered horizon lay their only hope, if they could walk far enough, fast enough, through a land that had already killed everything softer than stone. Juniper's whimper cut through the silence like broken glass. Colt studied her swollen belly with golden eyes that missed nothing. Not the way her ribs pressed against thinning fur, not the unnatural stillness between kitten kicks. Behind them stretched the familiar hell of their dying territory. Ahead rose the knife-edged mesas where even hawks feared to hunt. The calculus was brutal. Stay and watch Juniper waste away, or lead her into country that killed seasoned desert rats. When his rough tongue finally swiped across her muzzle, the decision was made. Survival wasn't about courage anymore. It was about which pain you chose. Life was eating Juniper alive from the inside. Each tiny kick from her unborn kittens stole another fraction of her strength until she could barely lift her head from the dust. Colt dropped the scrawny jackrabbit at her paws, their first meal in days, but her body rejected even this meager offering. Nature's cruelest joke played out in her weakening frame. The instinct to preserve life was systematically destroying hers. The contractions started at high noon, months too soon, racking her body with waves of agony. Somewhere above, a red-tailed hawk screamed. Whether in warning or anticipation, even Colt couldn't tell. Silence was the desert's newest weapon. No rustle of kangaroo rats, no warning chirps from ground squirrels, just the endless whisper of wind through dead grass. Juniper panted in the scant shade of a boulder, her tongue swollen with thirst. The crows had been following them since dawn, their black eyes tracking every stumble. Colt's ears twitched at their guttural calls. Not the usual desert soundtrack, but something darker. He suddenly understood. The birds weren't waiting for them to die. They were herding them toward the box canyon where the big cats hunted. The rules had changed. Now even the scavengers were predators. The coyote came at them with broken teeth desperation. Colt met it in a whirl of claws and snarls, their battle cries scattering the ever-present crows. Juniper tried to rise but collapsed, her body too weak to help. Blood sprayed across the pale earth as Colt took a savage bite to his haunch. But something was wrong. The coyote kept glancing over its shoulder, its attacks frantic rather than calculated. The ground trembled suddenly as a pronghorn herd stampeded past, their eyes white with terror. Colt broke away just in time to see what had spooked them. A dark shape moving low through the scrub. The coyote turned and ran, leaving Colt with a chilling realization. Something worse was coming. Moonlight transformed the canyon into a cathedral of shadows. Colt smelled it first, that musky predator scent, but wrong. Too young, too eager. The mountain lion watched from a ledge above, its tail twitching with anticipation. This wasn't the calculated hunt of an experienced cat, but the reckless cruelty of adolescence. Juniper pressed against the cool stone, her contractions coming faster now. Colt stepped forward deliberately, his fur bristling to make himself appear larger. The lion's eyes glowed with reflected moonlight as it rose from its crouch. Somewhere in the darkness, a pack rat scurried for cover, but the predator, the sound of Juniper's body hitting the earth would haunt Colt forever. She lay motionless except for the violent kicking in her belly, kittens demanding entry to a world that didn't want them. Every instinct screamed at Colt to leave her, to save himself while he still could. The lion was still out there, and now the wind carried their scent straight to it. But as Juniper's eyes fluttered open, glassy with pain, Colt did the unthinkable. He gripped her scruff gently in his teeth and began to drag. Her dead weight strained his exhausted muscles, but he persisted, moving inch by painful inch toward a narrow crevice. Behind them, the lion's hunting cough echoed off the stones, a sound that turned Colt's blood to ice. The sound of water was a siren's song in the desert silence. Colt's ears pricked forward at the faint trickle before his nose caught the underlying stench, sulfur and something darker. The spring emerged reluctantly from between the ribs of long-dead mule deer, their bones arranged in strange patterns. Juniper crawled toward it desperately, too far gone to notice the greenish scum floating on the surface. Colt's hackles rose as his paws sank into unnaturally soft mud crisscrossed with fresh claw marks far larger than his own. The water was real, but the price became horrifyingly clear when he spotted the scratches on nearby rocks, deep grooves made by something that didn't just kill for food, but for territory, for pleasure. Juniper's scream shattered the desert stillness. The pain came too fast, too hard. Her body wasn't meant to birth here in this exposed hellscape. Colt abandoned his watch to rush to her side, his tongue darting out to lick her face anxiously. The first kitten crowned prematurely, its tiny body struggling against Juniper's exhausted muscles. The den they should be in, safe, sheltered, prepared, was miles away across impossible terrain. Juniper's claws scored deep grooves in the stone beneath her as she strained, her breath coming in ragged gasps. Then came the new sound, the unmistakable crunch of boot on gravel. Colt whirled, lips peeling back from his teeth. But the human silhouetted against the canyon entrance wasn't the immediate threat. It was what was stalking him. Travis's rifle gleamed dully as he scanned the canyon floor, his boots kicking up little puffs of dust. He wasn't hunting bobcats. His eyes tracked the fresh mountain lion prints instead. The turkey vultures perched in the dead cottonwood didn't discriminate between hunter and prey. They watched with grotesque interest as Juniper panted through another contraction, the first kitten's head emerging too soon. Colt stood guard, his golden eyes darting between the human and the shadowy ridge where the lion lurked. The math was simple. Travis had bullets. The lion had patience. The bobcats had minutes. The kitten's coming wouldn't change that brutal equation. Somewhere beyond the canyon walls, thunder rumbled, the first real promise of rain in months. But in the desert, promises often came too late. The canyon unfolded like a green dream after endless miles of dust and death. Juniper collapsed at the water's edge, her swollen belly pressing into cool mud as she drank in greedy gulps. Colt stood frozen, muscles taut, tasting the air. Too sweet, too perfect. His eyes tracked the claw marks scoring the cottonwoods 7 feet high, fresh sap oozing from the wounds. Buried under autumn leaves, the remains of a mule deer fawn told the real story. This wasn't sanctuary. It was a killing ground. The mountain lion had buried its meals carefully, methodically. Predator who planned. Juniper's sudden contraction ripped through the stillness, her claws gouging trenches in the earth. The water promised life. The silence whispered warning. Somewhere in the shadowed rocks, yellow eyes blinked once, then vanished. The boot prints were still damp at the edges when Travis knelt in the wash. His calloused fingers hovered over the bobcat tracks, one set deep and staggered, a pregnant female nearing labor, one set light and purposeful, a male hunting for her. Then the mountain lion prints overlaying both, claws extended. The radio crackled. Den site located. She's in active labor. Allison's voice broke on the last word. Travis's hand drifted to his dart gun, the oxytocin vial cool against his palm. 20 years of strict observation protocols warred with the dark blood spotting the trail. The female was in trouble. His thumb flicked the safety off. Sometimes doing right meant breaking every rule you'd ever lived by. The thermal imaging display showed what human eyes couldn't, Juniper's core temperature plummeting between contractions in jagged red spikes. Allison zoomed the lens, stomach clenching at the dark pool expanding beneath the laboring bobcat. Too much blood. Too little time. On screen, Colt alternated between licking his mate's ears raw and scanning the canyon walls, oblivious to the placental abruption stealing her life minute by minute. The alert flashed crimson. Fetal distress, level 3. Her finger hovered over the emergency beacon. One call would bring the vet team, end her career. The camera's autofocus tightened on Juniper's eyes, pupils blown wide with pain and something deeper, something eerily like understanding. Allison's grandmother's voice whispered through memory, "Child, real compassion means getting your hands dirty." She grabbed the radio. The dart gun felt alien in Travis's weathered hands, its weight both nothing and everything. He moved like a shadow along the canyon wall, downwind, his pulse hammering in his ears. Colt's warning growl vibrated through the stone beneath his boots, but the tomcat held his ground, smart enough to recognize firearms, too proud to retreat. Juniper lay beyond caring, her breaths coming in wet, shallow gasps between weakening contractions. The dart found her flank with a soft thump. Oxytocin, against every regulation, against nature itself. The bobcats didn't know if it was poison or salvation. Neither did Travis. Above them, tawny fur rippled among the rocks as the young mountain lion shifted position. Curious. It had never seen humans before, this apex predator. Now it watched, learned, memorized the strange two-legged creatures who dared interrupt the kill it had been stalking for days. The lesson would cost them all. Scout entered the world silent and blue, his tiny body limp as Juniper strained to reach him. Colt nudged the still bundle frantically until a thin, reedy cry split the air, the most beautiful sound the canyon had heard in years. Juniper managed 2 weak licks before collapsing, her strength spent. One live birth in this wasteland should have been miracle enough. Then the scrub oak rustled. The young lion didn't roar, it chuffed, amused by this unexpected theater. Travis's rifle came up in one smooth motion as Colt bared bloodied fangs at both threats. Scout's blind mule echoed off the sandstone walls, a fragile heartbeat of sound. Somewhere beyond the ridge, a second gun cocked. The poachers had been watching longer than anyone realized, patient as the drought itself. The real predators weren't the ones with claws. The ATV tracks led Travis to a nest of crushed grass littered with shell casings and beer cans. His boot turned over a fresh bobcat pelt female, the teats still swollen with milk. Bile rose in his throat. Poachers. Worse than lions, worse than the drought. They didn't kill for food or territory or even sport. They skinned mothers alive because the fur stayed warmer that way, sold the pelts to collectors who asked no questions. Allison's radio crackled. Movement northeast. Human. Armed. Perfect timing. Juniper could barely stand after the birth, let alone run. Colt would fight to the death before abandoning his family. And tiny Scout, still wet with afterbirth, hadn't even opened his eyes yet to see the world that wanted him extinct. Travis chambered around, the click echoing like a death knell. Some sins couldn't be forgiven, only stopped. The coppery stench hit Colt's nose before he saw the crimson smear leading to Scout's hiding place beneath the ledge. The kitten whimpered pitifully, his right ear torn clean off, face a mask of blood. Juniper's answering snarl promised murder, but her trembling legs betrayed her. Colt took the ridge in 3 powerful bounds and froze. Not poachers. Worse, the young lion crouched over Scout, its muzzle glistening red, batting at the kitten like a house cat playing with a crippled mouse. The big cat never saw Travis's scope center between its eyes, never heard Allison's ATV roaring up the canyon. It only saw Colt, another toy to break open when the first one stopped moving. Scout's weak cry seemed to hang in the air, a fragile thread connecting all their fates. Then the lion pounced. Metal shrieked as the ATV flipped, throwing Allison clear moments before the lion's claws shredded the driver's seat where she'd been. Her Glock skittered across the rocks into the creek. Travis's rifle jammed on the second shot, the bolt locking tight. And Colt did the unthinkable. He charged the lion not to fight, but to lead it away straight toward the poacher's blind. The first gunshot dropped the cat mid-leap, its body slamming into the dirt. The second shot came from the wrong direction, the bullet whining past Colt's ear. He spun as fire erupted in his shoulder, the impact spinning him sideways. Juniper's answering scream sliced through the canyon, carrying a message only Colt understood. The real predators had finally shown themselves. As blood sheeted down his leg, Colt locked eyes with the poacher now emerging from the scrub oak, a face he'd seen before, in another life when humans were still the good guys. Blood matted Colt's flank in a slick crimson wave, but pain meant nothing now. He followed the poachers' dragging boot prints toward the canyon mouth, each step fueled by Juniper's pained yowls echoing off the stone. No stealth, no strategy. Let the monster hear death coming. The clearing revealed a nightmare. Juniper crammed into a rusted cage barely larger than her body, Scout dangling from the poacher's fist by one hind leg, the knife flashing in the dying light. Colt's leap was pure instinct, a tawny blur of teeth and rage. The shotgun blast lifted him off his feet, the world exploding in white heat. As he tumbled through the air, Colt saw three things in perfect clarity: the poacher's surprised face, Scout tumbling free, and Juniper's eyes as the cage door swung open. "Run," they said. "Save our son." Then the ground rose up to meet him, and everything went dark. The cage door gaped wide, freedom just one step away. Juniper didn't move. Outside, Scout's pitiful whimpers tangled with Colt's shallow, wet breaths. The poacher chuckled, grinding his boot into Colt's limp flank. "Your turn, Mama." The knife caught the last bloody light of sunset. The kittens inside Juniper kicked violently, their lives measured in seconds now. Her golden eyes locked on Allison's Glock, half buried in the sand, too far, too human, too impossible. Then Colt's tail twitched. Alive. The world narrowed to that single movement. Juniper took a shuddering breath and did what bobcats never do. She begged. The sound that left her throat was alien, pathetic, the desperate cry of a mother with no options left. The gunshot shattered the twilight, its echo bouncing between canyon walls. When the smoke cleared, three figures stood over the poacher's body: Travis with his jammed rifle, Allison empty-handed, and a gray-haired stranger holding a still smoking revolver. Only one gun had fired, and it wasn't the one anyone expected. The underground spring wasn't on any map. Colt dragged himself toward the sound of water, his shattered shoulder leaving a crimson trail through the sand. What he found wasn't salvation, but a graveyard. Dozens of animal skeletons lined the cavern walls, arranged in eerie circles around a single cottonwood sapling growing impossibly from stone. Scout's whimpers led him to Juniper, collapsed beneath the tree, her breathing shallow. The water here ran clear, but the rocks beneath it were stained black with something older than drought. Colt lapped at the pool, his wounds burning where the water touched them. Some places remembered violence. Some waters carried ghosts. As Juniper's eyes fluttered open, the cavern walls echoed with a sound no living creature could make. The collective last breath of everything that had died here. The spring gave life. The price came later. The revolver's cylinder clicked empty. Travis pressed his back against the canyon wall as the second poacher advanced, grinning around a missing tooth. Behind him, Allison staunched Colt's bleeding, while Juniper guarded Scout in the roots of the dead cottonwood. The old stranger, a retired ranger named Hayes, lay motionless in the dirt, his chest dark with blood. Travis's hands shook not from fear, but rage. 20 years preserving wildlife, only to end like this. Then movement, Colt rising unsteadily, lips peeled back from broken teeth. The poacher laughed, until the mountain lion hit him from behind. Not an attack. Collision. The young cat they darted earlier, now fighting beside them. Travis's last bullet wasn't in the chamber after all. It was the unintended consequence of mercy. As the poacher screamed, Travis understood nature kept score in ways humans never could. The legend was carved into the canyon wall in ancient pictographs. A spring that healed wounds but demanded payment in kind. Colt limped past the markings, Scout clutched gently in his jaws. Behind them, Juniper paused to drink, the water closing her wounds but deepening the hollows beneath her eyes. The sapling's roots pulsed faintly where blood had soaked the earth. Travis traced the carvings with trembling fingers. Not warnings, but instructions. Every healed wound here created another predator. The mountain lion loped past them, its yellow eyes now clear of madness. Allison gasped as her sprained ankle knitted itself before their eyes. The canyon wasn't cursed. It was alive. and it remembered every creature that had ever died within its walls. As night fell, the wind carried whispers none of them could understand, the cottonwood's leaves rustling with voices not their own. Some gifts couldn't be returned, only repaid. It began as a growl deep in her chest, a sound that shook pebbles from the canyon walls. Juniper stood over Scout's sleeping form, her fur glowing silver in the moonlight. Colt tried to nuzzle her, but she recoiled, her eyes reflecting something older than either of them. The howl that tore from her throat wasn't entirely animal. It carried the weight of the cavern's ghosts, the taste of ironwood sap, the memory of every life the spring had ever taken. Travis's radio burst with static as every light in the preserve flickered. In town, dogs howled along. Deep in the canyon, the young lion bowed its head. When the sound faded, Juniper collapsed beside Colt, her breathing normal again. But the kittens inside her, they'd gone still. The price had been paid. The spring's ledger balanced. And somewhere, the cottonwood sapling grew another inch toward the stars. The missing ear made him look lopsided, vulnerable. But when Scout opened his eyes for the first time, really opened them, Colt saw something that chilled his blood. Understanding. The kitten limped to the pool's edge, dipped one paw in, and let the water sizzle against his wound. When he turned back, his gaze held centuries. Travis made the sign of the cross without thinking. Allison's camera captured it all. The way the moonlight seemed to avoid Scout, the unnatural stillness where he stood. Then he was just a kitten again, stumbling into Juniper's embrace. But Colt had seen, and remembered, that night, as the humans slept, Scout slipped from the den and sat facing the canyon wall. The pictographs shimmered in the dark, their meaning suddenly clear to young eyes. Some legacies couldn't be escaped, only embraced. When he returned at dawn, his paws left faint scorch marks in the sand that faded by sunrise. The change came slowly. Juniper's muzzle grayed overnight. Her steps gained a strange precision. Her kills became eerily efficient. She'd vanish for hours, returning with prey untouched by tooth or claw, their necks neatly broken, eyes wide with terror. Colt watched in silence as she groomed Scout with meticulous care, her tongue pausing occasionally as if listening to something only she could hear. Travis found the first evidence at dawn. A poacher's camp abandoned mid-meal, the coffee still steaming. No blood, no struggle, just 12 empty pairs of boots arranged in a perfect circle, their laces tied together. When he radioed Allison, the static carried a whisper that wasn't human. That evening, Juniper brought him a gift, a fresh rattlesnake, its fangs carefully removed. Her golden eyes held depths that hadn't been there yesterday. Some transformations didn't require magic, just remembering. He knew before the others. The stiffness in his joints wasn't age, but the land reclaiming what it had lent. Colt led them to the high mesa at dawn, his gait steady despite the pain. Juniper walked beside him, her gray muzzle lifted to the wind. Below, Scout practiced hunting with the mountain lion, an impossible friendship forged in the spring's waters. Travis and Allison watched from the ridge, their hands clasped tight. When the first rays hit the mesa, Colt exhaled a breath he'd been holding for years. His body dissolved like mist, swirling into the colors of sunrise. Where he'd stood, a new ironwood sapling took root, its leaves unfurling with a sound like distant laughter. Juniper didn't howl. She rubbed her cheek against the slender trunk, then turned downhill without looking back. Some goodbyes weren't endings, only transformations. The tree would stand for centuries. Allison's cameras recorded it all. Juniper padding into the den one evening and never emerging. Scout waiting 3 days before venturing inside. The way his ears flattened at whatever scent remained. The den mouth collapsed at dawn on the 4th day, burying whatever secrets it held. Travis found the tracks leading east, one set of bobcat prints, one set of human-like bare feet walking side by side. The preserve's records would list them as missing. The tribal elders who visited that winter left offerings of tobacco and blue corn at the mesa's base. Their whispered prayers spoke of the mothers who remember and the children who walk between. Allison's footage of Scout's final appearance showed something impossible. a young man with tawny eyes and a missing right ear, standing where the ironwood sapling grew tallest. Then static. When the camera refocused, only paw prints remained. Some stories don't end. They just change tellers. The first sightings came near mining towns. A bobcat with a notched ear, seen moments before equipment failures saved trapped hikers. A gray-haired woman appearing at wildfire evacuations, her pockets full of unscorched seedlings. Travis's retirement newsletter circulated a blurred photo, two figures watching from a ridge as bulldozers mysteriously died at a sacred site. Allison's final research paper contained an entire redacted chapter titled The Ironwood Effect. By the time the TikTok generation discovered the legend, Scout had become an internet-cryptid #GhostCat, trended for weeks after a viral video showed something moving through a Nevada wildfire untouched by flames. The tribal police kept finding poacher camps abandoned with the coffee still warm, boots neatly lined up like schoolchildren's. And in the quietest hours, rangers reported hearing a sound that wasn't quite a howl or a song drifting through the canyons. Some revolutions don't need banners, just good hunting grounds and long memories. The old man's hands trembled as he adjusted the oxygen tube. Listen close now. The children leaned in, smelling of sunscreen and candy. This ain't just about bobcats. Outside the visitor center window, the ironwood grove shimmered in the heat. That spring's still there, still hungry, and the things that drink from it. He tapped the faded photo on the wall, a young ranger, Travis, smiling beside a sapling. They walk among us now. Not good, not evil, just balancing. A gust of wind made the kids jump. The old man chuckled. Relax. If she wanted you, you wouldn't hear it coming. He turned back to the canyon, where shadows moved just beyond the tree line. One had a notched ear. The other carried something that might have been a child or a cub. Tell your folks what you saw today, or don't. But remember, every time you protect wild places, you're not just saving animals. The oxygen machine hissed. You're making allies. The wind carried voices through the rustling ironwood leaves. Travis sat bolt upright in his cabin, hearing words no human throat could form. Outside, the mountain lion he'd saved paced nervously, ears flat. The tribal elders called it the land remembering itself. Allison's cameras captured glowing paw prints circling the spring at midnight, burning faintly before fading. Scout hadn't been seen in weeks, but fresh kills appeared daily at the preserve's borders, poachers' trucks with engines mysteriously dead. Traps sprung from the inside. The canyon was teaching new rules. Some debts couldn't be paid with money, only blood. Juniper's new den reeked of ironwood sap. The 5 kittens bore strange markings, one with Travis's blue eyes, another with Allison's auburn streaks in its fur. They never cried, never played, just watched. The mountain lion brought them fresh kills daily, bowing its head before retreating. When wildlife officials came to investigate, the den stood empty except for 5 perfect clay figurines, still warm. Tribal elders collected them reverently. Not litter, they corrected. Judges. That night, 5 new saplings sprouted around Colt's tree. The preserve's crime rate dropped to 0. Some laws need no enforcement, just witnesses. Travis's pension paperwork listed hazardous duty. He left his badge by the spring at midnight. The water didn't take it. At dawn, he found the badge polished, hanging from Colt's tree by a braid of Juniper's gray fur. His replacement, a young woman with a notched ear, already knew the preserve's true boundaries. They chose well, murmured Allison, watching the new ranger calmly pet the mountain lion. That evening, Travis's cabin stood empty, his journal left open to a fresh page containing 2 words in unfamiliar handwriting. Watch. Learn. Some retirements aren't endings, just changing patrol routes. Allison's university crowd scoffed until she played the audio. Static gave way to Juniper's howl. The recording equipment had melted afterward. Symbiotic vengeance, she called it. The dean cut funding when her photos of Scout walking upright surfaced. Her resignation letter simply read, "Tenure can't explain what's coming." They found her office empty except for 5 clay paw prints hardening on her desk. Her final paper, published posthumously, contained one underlined passage. When the wild places birthed guardians instead of victims, the balance shifted. Some research can't be peer-reviewed, only experienced. The university's wildlife program closed that semester. The spring's ledger needed balancing. 12 fresh mounds appeared downwind from Ironwood, marked only by boots placed heel to toe in perfect lines. No bodies, just empty clothes holding shape until the first touch. The mountain lion patrolled them nightly, its muzzle gone gray. Tribal police closed the cases with a single word: judged. Travis's replacement left offerings at each grave, not flowers, but poachers' knives slowly rusting into the earth. Some justice doesn't need courts, just witnesses with claws and long memories. The preserve's new slogan appeared carved into the visitor center door overnight: walk softly. The land is hungry. Ironwood saplings sprouted nationwide outside courthouses, mining offices, wildlife trafficking warehouses. Each bore strange markings resembling claw scars. Security cameras showed nothing but wind stirring the leaves before buildings mysteriously lost power. Files corrupted, weapons jammed. Botanists swore the trees couldn't grow in those soils. Yet they thrived, their roots cracking concrete foundations. When loggers tried cutting one, their chainsaws spat out teeth made of rust. The oldest tribal elder smiled at the news. Not trees, he corrected. Standing warrants. Some laws grow slowly, but their roots run deep. The spring's taste altered. Hikers reported healing wounds after just one sip, but their hair turned gray overnight. Wildlife officials found the mountain lion drinking alongside coyotes, bears, even a tagged wolf from 3 states away. No fighting, no fear, just quiet communion. When bottled water companies tried tapping the source, their equipment emerged twisted into abstract sculptures. The new ranger hung warning signs in a language no linguist recognized. Yet everyone understood. Some gifts aren't for sale, only earned. The preserve's visitor log showed increasing signatures from terminal patients. Few returned. Those who did bore strange scars and stranger smiles. He came at midnight, armed with silver bullets and Bibles. The cameras caught him screaming about demons before static claimed the footage. At dawn, they found his rifle stock sprouting ironwood leaves, the barrel filled with desert wildflowers. His boots stood neatly by the spring, laces tied together. The mountain lion slept atop his abandoned clothes, its muzzle resting on a folded photograph Colt and Juniper's first litter. Tribal police closed the file. Not missing, the report stated. Repurposed. Some reckonings take generations, but the land never forgets a debt. The wind carried laughter through the canyon that night. The cancer-stricken boy touched Colt's tree and gasped. His parents wept as color returned to his cheeks. By sunset, his forestand had rooted itself, blooming with indigo flowers. The preserve's new ranger merely nodded, handing the family a clay figurine, a bobcat with a child riding its back. Return it when he turns 18, she instructed. Doctors called it spontaneous remission. The tribal elders called it something older. That night, security cameras captured 5 shadows circling the visitor center: 2 bobcats, a mountain lion, and 2 shapes that might have been human, or something better. Some healings defy medicine, but not nature. Seismographs recorded nothing. Yet hundreds swore they saw Ironwood Grove uproot itself at midnight, marching toward the new highway construction. By dawn, the bulldozers stood encased in living wood, operators unharmed but forever mute. The saplings had replanted themselves in perfect courtroom formation around the site. The foreman resigned after finding his blueprint tattooed backward on his chest in bark patterns. Tribal leaders simply nodded. The judges ruled. That evening, the wind carried an unfamiliar sound, something between a bobcat's purr and a gavel's strike. Some progress isn't measured in miles paved, but in routes left undisturbed. The highway was rerouted. The newborn's cry echoed strangely through the canyon, part bobcat, part human. The midwife, Allison's former student, trembled as she placed the gray-furred infant in its mother's arms. 5 tiny claws pricked the woman's skin, drawing blood that shimmered like the spring water. By morning, both had vanished. The only evidence: ironwood saplings sprouting around the family's trailer, their leaves whispering in a language Google Translate identified as archaic Navajo, mixed with something older. Some bloodlines weren't meant to continue, only evolve. The preserve's new sign appeared overnight: no photography. The children are learning. Trail cameras captured them moving single file at twilight: bobcats, mountain lions, even a grizzly, all heading toward Ironwood. No fights, no sounds, just purposeful strides. Biologists found their collars discarded in perfect circles. Batteries dead. The tribal police chief smiled at the reports. Not migration, he corrected. Enlistment. That full moon, 12 oil executives vanished from a nearby conference. Their rental cars sat idling at the preserve's gate, keys in ignitions, radios playing static that formed words when played backward. The soil remembers the drill's teeth. Some protests don't need picket signs, just predators with patience. Hunters' forums buzzed about the 10-point buck that absorbed bullets like rain. Game wardens found the creature calmly drinking from Ironwood Spring, its fur woven with living vines that gently removed the slugs. The would-be poachers? Their rifles had grown into the earth, barrels blooming with white flowers. The preserve's new ranger, the one with cat-slit pupils, simply posted a note: missed on purpose. That night, security footage showed the buck leading a procession of animals past Colt's tree, each pausing to touch their foreheads to its bark. Some lessons require repetition. The hunting licenses in that county now bear an unusual watermark: Juniper's face. It started at sunrise, every firearm within 50 miles locked solid. Not even gunsmiths could explain the ironwood resin clogging each barrel. Meanwhile, at the preserve, a dozen newly planted saplings oozed sap that smelled distinctly of gunpowder. The tribal elders held a ceremony using bullet casings as wind chimes. Not a miracle, chuckled their oldest member. Just good parenting. That afternoon, the mountain lion, now fully gray-muzzled, brought a gift to the visitor center. A perfect clay replica of an AR-15. Its barrel twisted into a seedling. Some disarmaments aren't political. They're ecological. Astronomers panicked when the constellation Orion vanished for exactly 13 minutes. The preserve's night cameras told a different story. The stars had gathered around Ironwood Spring in a shimmering circle. When they returned skyward, the water's surface reflected new constellations: a bobcat, a mountain lion, and 5 kittens arranged like a jury. The next morning, 12 fracking executives awoke with these same marks glowing faintly on their chests. None could enter the preserve afterward. The gates repelled them like magnets. Some verdicts are written in light. The tribal police logbook that day contained one entry: celestial subpoenas served. Kindergarten teachers gasped when every student produced the same crayon sketch: a gray bobcat surrounded by 5 kittens with human eyes. The eerie part? None had met. Child psychologists called it collective hysteria. Then the preserve's new saplings sprouted leaves matching the crayon colors exactly. Parents who tried moving away found their cars wouldn't start until they returned the drawings to Ironwood Spring. The water that night ran red, then clear. Some curricula can't be taught in schools. The tribal elders began holding story time at the preserve's gates each full moon. Attendance was mandatory. The driver swore the trees moved. His rig was found idling in the preserve's parking lot, its trailer empty except for a single ironwood sapling growing through the engine block. The load of old-growth pine had vanished. Months later, hikers discovered a perfect circle of ancient trees where none had stood before, each bearing axe marks that had healed into eyes. The driver? He runs the visitor center now, his hands permanently stained with sap no soap can remove. Some second chances come with conditions. His name tag reads, "Hello, my name is Witness." The mountain lion sleeps at his feet daily. The courthouse lawn sprouted 12 ironwood trees overnight, arranged in jury box formation. The presiding judge, a notorious anti-environmentalist, found his robe replaced by living bark each morning. The final straw? When the court reporter's transcripts appeared carved into the trees, revealing every bribe he'd ever taken. The preserve's new ranger, her notched ear now bearing a silver ring, simply said, "Subpoenas grow differently here." That afternoon, the disgraced judge was last seen walking into the canyon wearing only his undergarments and a necklace of acorns. Some recusals are voluntary. The trees now bear fruit that tastes suspiciously like justice. Weather stations recorded it as a microburst. But every child under 12 heard the words clearly, "Enough." Simultaneously, across 6 states, polluting factories collapsed like sandcastles. Their foundations, crisscrossed with ironwood roots. The preserved spring ran black for exactly 13 minutes before producing the clearest water ever recorded. Hydrologists who tested it emerged with streaks of gray in their hair and a sudden fluency in Navajo. Some warnings don't need translation. That night, trail cameras captured Scout, now fully human-shaped but for his ears, blowing dandelion seeds into the wind. Each carried a single word in pollen. "Remember." The old ranger's note was simple. "They've chosen you." The keys to the visitor center lay atop a clay bobcat figurine that warmed at your touch. Outside, the mountain lion, its muzzle now completely silver, waited patiently. The spring's water shimmered invitingly. Somewhere in the canyon, 5 pairs of eyes glowed briefly before vanishing. The logbook's final entry read, "The land doesn't need protectors, just witnesses who'll listen when it speaks." You take the keys, the Ironwood Grove sighs in approval. Some jobs aren't careers, they're blood deeps. The gate locks behind you with a sound like a purr.